All right, everyone. So we got really big news here for the NBA. All right, everything is going to change after this, in my opinion. So we're going to look at NBA insider Brian Windhorst, something he had to say at the end of this. But let's start by setting the scene. Okay, so this has started with the idea of the Warriors making a move for not just Anthony Davis or not just LeBron, but both of them. So this would give you Steph, LeBron, AD, and Draymond Green all on the same team. Now, are they better than the Spurs? To be seen. Are they better than the Thunder? To be seen. But this would certainly take them from a team that is viewed as, look, the run is kind of over to maybe they could do something. All right. So this is just to set the background information here. This is where this is coming from. This is where we start. Then we get this today. Warriors forward Draymond Green is declining his $27.7 million player option and becoming a free agent. Now, it was interesting because at first, when you first read the headline, a lot of people were thinking, oh, this must mean maybe Draymond's going somewhere. Nope. This is likely, well, I guess it could still, right? We don't know for sure, but this is likely setting up for flexibility to allow this deal to happen. And before we go on to what Brian Windhorst is going to say about it, I just want to point out that if this is Draymond Green taking a major pay cut, kudos to him. We just saw this with Jalen Brunson. All right. Your legacy means so much more than the amount of money you're making per year on a contract. It just does. Jalen Brunson, he could have taken that 100 million extra, right? And wouldn't have done what he did for the city of New York, right? What he did for the Knicks franchise. The whole state of New York was just captivated by this Knicks team. New York City, the city itself, now holds him up as like this is the greatest player maybe in history, whether that's true or not. And that only happens because of him taking that pay cut. Because they weren't beating the teams they beat had they had one less guy on that roster in terms of the starting lineup. So yes, Draymond may be taking a pay cut here, but this is to enshrine himself again, right? Right. It's always been viewed. You had the Splash Brothers, right? You had Steph, you had Clay. Draymond was an important part of this as a defensive guy, right? Just a key player on those teams. If they're able to get another ring, you bet your ass Draymond Green's legacy gets even better. So this is a legacy play, and I'm not saying that every athlete should take pay cuts and that money doesn't matter at all. Of course, there's a limit, but when you've already had your big contracts, when you've already made so much money playing the game, you could start working on the legacy aspect of this. And Jalen Brunson basically made a bet on himself that paid off. Right? That's basically what he did. And that 100 million he didn't get, he may still end up getting on the back end of his career, one. And two, in terms of his brand, he may make more than that off it. Okay. Now let's get to Windhorst and what he had to say, and we will react.
This is potentially, okay, a very big domino in this entire NBA offseason. Okay, this is the news we were waiting to see what was going to happen today. For months, the expectation was that Draymond Green was going to pick up this option, play alongside Steph Curry, and they were going to wait for Jimmy Butler to come back and try to assemble something in the second half of the season. This is an indication that Draymond Green is willing to take a pay cut. Now, if they don't get these players, Draymond could just re-sign right back into this deal. But this opens the door for the Warriors to use their mid-level exception of $15 million. And $15 million for LeBron James is a preposterous bargain, okay? But the thing that I have been told, the Lakers have interest in re-signing LeBron. They expressed that interest as soon as they were able at the end of the finals. They want to give LeBron a contract offer. They want to meet with him and give him their plan for what they want to do in free agency. But the way it was explained to me, Amina, LeBron has been unavailable for a meeting with the Lakers.
That's pretty big. This is coming from Brian Windhorst. This guy knows his stuff as it pertains to, the inside and outs of the league, and especially when it comes to LeBron. Now, it doesn't mean this is going to happen. I can see LeBron going back to Los Angeles, go back to the Lakers, but I think this is a pretty good picture of, the Warriors are going to make a move, as they should. And by the way, LeBron, and I don't know what he's going to decide because I think there is a strong argument to be made about, hey, look, the Lakers do have a Luka Doncic, right? He's one of the best players in the league right now. Maybe LeBron looks at this team and goes, I don't know if this is actually even good enough to beat these other teams. But if you can get AD in here, Steph is still playing at a pretty high level. Draymond, for his role, is still playing at a pretty high level. This might be the best place for him. And it's going to be interesting to see if this rumor mill starts, churning now. And Brian Windhorst just kind of laid it out of everything I have heard over the offseason and even leading into the offseason was LeBron's probably going to want to stay with the Lakers. That's not what he just said. What he just said is he's been unavailable for a meeting, per se. So maybe LeBron has always kind of felt that, okay, I'm on my way out of LA now and I'm going to be heading elsewhere with the ability to go back and sign the deal if he wants to. I feel like there's a chance here. And I just want to say this too. If you are LeBron James, you are a billionaire, right? This getting another ring does more for you than signing another big offer, big deal with the Lakers. LeBron has, for the, I don't want to say the first time because his whole career he's kind of made comments about Jordan and stuff like that and wanting to be the GOAT and all of that. You want to be the GOAT? You want to have a resume that's on par with Michael Jordan? You ain't going to do that if you don't win another ring. You need more rings. Bottom line, I know, it's kind of, there's a lot of dialogue now trying to push LeBron into the GOAT conversation. The bottom line is most people still feel that it's Jordan. And so the way you start ramping up that conversation again is getting another championship. And so that to me should be his goal. Right. And I know he wants to playing with his son. If he decides, look, I want to play with my son, it's not even about the money. Completely get it. Got no problem with it. Right. In that case, you go, okay, that's his reasoning. I just think if he decides that, you know what, I'm just going to take, I would rather just take another big deal from the Lakers than have to take a pay cut to go to the Warriors. I think he's going to make a decision he regrets because you could take this deal. And if you take this deal on a pay cut, have a chance to compete in your final few seasons for championships. If you get AD, if you have Draymond, if you have Steph, you have LeBron, this is a roster that will be in talks. I don't think they're going to be the favorite because you do have the Spurs and the Thunder that are so dominant, but you're going to be in a better position than I think you would be with the Lakers.
And you're going to say, well, what does that mean? I don't know what it means. I know that is what I have been told. LeBron has been unavailable. He has been playing golf basically every day, whether it's in France or Akron, Ohio for the last week. He has been unavailable. The Lakers are running out of time. They need to begin their offseason. Now we see Draymond Green, a longtime LeBron James confidant, who has the same agent, who now opts out of his contract to open up a window. That doesn't mean it's a done deal, but it opens up a window. If Draymond had stayed in this contract, the Warriors would not be able to lower their salary down enough to get access to that $15 million. So I would just say this, stay tuned.
That's big. That's big. And I look, from the Warriors' perspective, I have no problem with what they're doing. I think the idea of you have your all-time player like Steph Curry, you have someone like Draymond Green who, isn't quite Steph Curry, but obviously in terms of importance to the franchise, he's right up there because he was such a key part of those rings. Obviously for all-time greats, Steph Curry, is ahead of Draymond Green. But in terms of for the Warriors, Draymond was just as important, right? Not as good, but equally as important. With that said, you don't want to let those guys go out in the way they're going out right now. I mean, it's just kind of a complete debacle in a sense. You just have really they're not even close to contention, right? You could in 2022 after they beat the Celtics, I thought, man, they found Jordan Poole. They were really on the second half of this now. They're like, you're going to attempt to build another dynasty now with, kind of the aging stars, but with the new guy, helping that out. And then obviously Draymond with the punch and all of that. And since then, this team hasn't been anywhere near that. In fact, they've been kind of a dumpster fire in terms of roster construction, right? It's just, you look at the rosters and you're like, these guys don't even fit. It's like the complete opposite of what we're used to with them. So now you have an ability to turn all of that around. And even if they don't win a ring, look, is there a world you do all of this, you get LeBron, you get AD, and you're not good enough to beat the Thunder, and you're not good enough to beat the Spurs? 100%. You're not good enough to beat the T-Wolves, right? If that really works out between LaMelo and Ant Edwards. You're not good enough to beat the Nuggets even. Is there a world where that happens? Of course. But this is at least going to make you have an interesting year, right? This roster makes sense. Let's go top to bottom. Curry, LeBron, right? Those are your going to be your primary offensive playmakers, right? Curry probably doing a little bit more of the scoring, but both are going to have that role. Both can move the ball, right? LeBron can kind of orchestrate a lot. Draymond Green, you got your defensive specialist and a guy who offensively isn't going to get you a ton of points, but also can move the ball. Anthony Davis, if he could stay healthy, well, you just found your matchup for Wemby in the playoffs. You found your matchup for him, right? He could protect the rim and make life miserable for Wemby. So you have a good roster there, right? You have something, a starting point to build around. You get the right pieces in there. And by the way, this doesn't have to be a 1 year deal either. LeBron probably has 2, maybe 3 years left from everything. I haven't heard him kind of be like, this is my final year. He might have 2 or 3 years left. So you may be able to put these pieces in place for like, all right, this is a 2 year thing, right? Maybe this year is the first year everybody gets accustomed to playing together. Then next year we're able to draft and add a few more pieces on top of this to make it happen. Now, the hardest part, I think, if LeBron ends up wanting to go, is going to be, can you get AD, right? Is that somebody that's going to be able to be moved, and do you have the assets to pick him up and all of that? And that's yet to be seen. We don't know if that's going to be the case. All right. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time.